I'm so excited and scared to talk to you all at the same time. This
We
is
had
a
we had lights on us last time. They looked really good. That's okay.
I can that we did and it was brighter. So what I guess we just carry on.
We'll carry on for today. We can just brighten it,
Okay.
but next time let's remember those lights. Okay. Yeah.
Don't be scared. Don't be scared.
I mean, it's
Oh,
just really, we're talking to Allison, who's an expert, and I just feel the cell phone conversation, most of us want to like bury our heads in the sand because it really does feel scary. And for some of us, we've already started, we're like in it. So it's like reversing, just pull a bit closer, Nat. You're at table. Reversing that conversation is just
Yeah.
okay.
I'm gonna do a proper intro for the doctor that we have on our show today. This is Dr. Alison Yeung. She is a family physician from Ontario, Canada, who has been practicing for over a decade. During her career, she began to notice an increase in visits relating to teen mental health. She also noticed that kids are spending more time on devices, particularly social media, YouTube, and video games. After diving into the research on this topic, she became very, very concerned with the way devices are impacting the mental health of youth. She is now working to educate parents, empower them to delay their children's access to social media and reduce harm caused by handheld device use. Oh, wow. Okay. Oh
So
my gosh.
are you practicing now with kids like all the time?
Yeah. So I have a practice of like a little over 1,200 people and a
Wow.
lot of like younger families. So I definitely say, I would say like at least a quarter of my visits every day are related to mental health. And then a number of those are children.
Okay, so I know we have all these questions, but as a mom, I'm gonna just ask from like my mom heart for a second. And I am wondering if I is part of it that we have words for what kids are feeling now versus that what's going on in society. I'm just curious.
Yeah. No. And I think there's a few things to that. Like I think it is increased recognition. We're not pushing down their feelings all the time, which I think is a good thing. So there's more diagnosis happening because we are more open to talking about it.
Hmm.
Um, and I do think there is some like glamorization of mental health happening on social media as well. Like I've I've often wondered because most of the kids that come in to see me, they tell me they have suicidal thoughts. Almost all of them tell me this, which, when I think back to when I was a teenager, I feel like this was just, it wasn't a thing. Um, and so I don't know how much of it, because they see so much of it pushed to them on content, if they think it's sort of normal to feel this way,
Yeah.
or instead of just wanting to escape their feelings, it automatically goes to thinking, I don't want to live anymore. I think there's a lot to unpack there, and I'm not honestly
Yeah.
totally sure, but
I was also going to say, as someone who I remember when you didn't know about like LGBTQ, like when you were growing up in teen years and you were like, am I, aren't I? And if you thought it, then you were or you weren't. So I sometimes feel like because it's a conversation, I think that those thoughts might cross your mind, like, what if I did that? Because if it is a conversation, like, wait, could I do that? Would am I gonna do that? And it's
You
like
didn't
what.
even know it was an option
Yeah,
before.
and
yeah.
you're afraid it's going to happen to you or you're going to like catch it, So you're like, I got to go to the doctor. It's like I was afraid to get arrested when I was like 6. I was so afraid to go to jail. And it was not realistic, but in your head, because there's something that's been in there, you're like too afraid to say it out loud. And so they
Yeah.
come to you and they're like, "Oh my God, I think am I going to do this because depression looks happy and I'm happy, but maybe I'm not, you're confused about what you actually, I'm not saying that that's the reason. I'm just wondering if that's part of it too.
No, and it's funny because my colleagues and I were talking about that yesterday, and talking about how, like adolescence is a time where they're supposed to explore. Like they're supposed to be confused. They're like trying to figure out who they are and where they fit in. And, your best friend today is not your best friend tomorrow. Who you are today might not be who you are tomorrow. Like some of that's normal. And so I think the increased acceptance around it is a good thing. And, we just have to kind of meet them where they're at. But
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a good point.
And do you feel like the increase in smartphones and social media has, when you're talking, especially when you're talking to the kids and you're trying to diagnose where these feelings are coming from, is it really increasing their anxiety and depression? And how do you know those two are connected?
Yeah. So I feel like I'll give you some examples of what I see.
Good.
most of the time I see social media as like this match that lights a fire. So
Mm.
most of the time, you have a kid that comes in who's got a risk factor of some kind. So it might be a child who has mild ADHD, but like they've been managing, they're doing okay. It might be a kid who has some social anxiety and has some difficulty making friends in the real world, or a kid who just has body image issues for whatever reason. They're kind of born that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you take that child, I find that when you then give them social media, a lot of times what happens is it's like it starts this fire. And so all of a sudden they're sucked in and they're spending hours a day looking at this content that really knows how to find those vulnerabilities and pick on them. And so all of a sudden you've got the ADHD child who is doing okay, but now he loves the dopamine that he's getting on these short reels, and now he can't focus in school at all. And now he needs medication. Or the child with the low confidence who gets into video games or whatever it may be, gets sucked into that world, maybe finds some friends online, but is then using that technology for so many hours a day that you can't pull them out of the house to go meet people in real life. I see that a lot.
Really?
Or the kid with body image issues who, the algorithm picks up on that's an issue and starts feeding them eating disorder content. And now all of a sudden they're admitted with an eating disorder. So it's not always that the social media is like the cause. I have seen that, but the more likely thing is that it's just exacerbating everything that's already going on.
And I think, Allison, it's really important to note that people who talk about it, if they're talking about it with their friends or searching it or doing something, the algorithm can hear your phone, which is so weird because it listens and then starts serving. So I think that's what's confusing, is what's on your page isn't what's on your kid's page, which isn't what's on their friend's page.
Yes.
So when you are talking about it, or if they're talking about it or looking at it on another device, it will sync up to their phone. And then even if they're talking about it at school, all of a sudden it will start to come into their algorithm. So it's like they don't even know there's another world out there. I'm just trying to educate the parents who are like, well, my kid doesn't do that, but you don't know what they're doing because the algorithm is that smart that it will lead them to what you're saying is they're one vulnerable I can't talk vulnerable search that will take them down the rabbit hole, and they might identify with it and be like, oh, this is what I have, and then they diagnose themselves online.
Yeah,
right.
And they don't even know that like their friend's algorithm is different. They think that like we're all looking at the same thing, but literally it knows what you're thinking. It knows what's on your mind, and then it serves you more of that.
And it can change so quickly too. Like you may have a kid who is completely fine and goes through a breakup, and there was an investigation into TikTok, like if they start to spend a little bit more time on sad content because they just want to feel seen or whatever, like
It's like sad music.
can change, yeah, so quickly. And it was like within 20 minutes they were seeing self-harm content. So like that's the stuff that to me, I hate all the tech companies, which is a whole other conversation, but like what they're doing to the children in sort of fueling this fire is just inexcusable, I think.
It's hard because this is what's hard for parents, I think. And we have 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, and during COVID, they got in trouble if they weren't on their devices. And the only way they could connect was on their devices. And, FaceTiming and communicating on Snapchat was how they got connection. And then here we are. And it's sort of like we don't acknowledge that as for us parents who are, 5 or 6 years into this, it feels like we're doomed because our kids are now here. And I think a lot of parents feel a lot of responsibility, and they're like, delete everything, get rid of your phone, take your phone away. And we just spent 3 years, especially in Ontario, telling them, get on your devices. You have to spend 8 hours in your room. Like, what's wrong with you? We don't acknowledge how much we encourage them to live in that world. And that really did become their world. And I think for some of them, it keeps them socially connected and on a healthier path rather than now ripping it out of their hands because we're so afraid of the outcomes. Yeah. The parents there that are in this position, where we're sitting here understanding the harms, but now backtracking and being like, we're done. Is there a happy medium, or is it, you know,
all or nothing?
You bust, like you're all screwed if they're on any app.
Yeah, no, I first of all don't want parents to blame themselves, because I think this is, there's a lot of people that will blame this as a parent issue. The parents need to deal with this, like be a parent. I hate that rhetoric, because I feel like this is not your fault. Like this happened to us. It was happening to us even before COVID, and then COVID thrusted you all into it. And the tech companies took full advantage of that, right? And so now we've sort of overshot the mark. Like we know that kids are spending an average of 4 to 6 hours a day on social media, and so we've overshot the mark, and maybe it is time to say, we're not in COVID anymore. We have to readjust things. But I don't think it means that we have to take everything away. I think you can ask yourself some key questions, like as it pertains to your kid, because everybody's kid is different. So, just ask those questions, like, is my child's technology, video games, phone, whatever, interfering with their real life activities? Like, are they not wanting to do the extracurriculars that they used to want to do? Is it a fight to get them off the phone to go out and see their friends in real life, or do they just want to talk to them online? Do they not want to come down and hang out with you in the living room anymore because they're so focused on being on their device? Do you notice that their mood is really down, or they're down on themselves after they get off of their device? And are they like trying to break the rules or use the device when you've asked them not to? Like, I think there's these key things that if you can say to yourself, like, no, I think there's balance happening in my house, and my kid is doing well. They're still living a life in the real world. Then I think you just continue to monitor and see if that continues to be the case. If it's not, and they're on their device for 3, 4, 5, 6+ hours a day, and you're seeing some of this harm happening, that's when I think you need to take a step back and say, okay, it's not their fault. It's not my fault. They are pulled into these addictive algorithms, and we just have to change things up and set some new boundaries. But the way that you do that cannot be like a punitive thing.
And for the parents with like tweens who we are creating a cell phone course right now for parents with like all of the permissions, all of the boundaries, and we're sort of the middle of the line parent, where we think we'd rather teach them how to use it, have a healthy relationship with the phone, not just social media, because I think that technology's in our life, and they get computers for school, and parents like they'll take the phone away. I'm like, well, guess what? They have access. They can find Snapchat and Instagram and TikTok on their computers and on their iPads. Like, technology is here, and it's how can we teach them how to have a relationship and understand their own boundaries, when as adults we struggle with our own boundaries on technology, right? So when you have younger children, I know you say delay the process of, is it just social media, or is it the technology, or like in terms of delaying, how long would you say delay, and what would you say delay? What would you delay?
So again, I think it's child based, and it depends on the temperament of your child. You may have a kid who you tell them a rule and they will follow it, and that's that. And then you've got your kids who will test the boundaries more. So I think putting an age on things is not necessarily the right way to do it. I do sort of feel strongly that at those younger ages, like generally before puberty, the harms outweigh the benefits in such a big way that if we can get enough parents on board that feel the same way, then your kid isn't going to feel like that pariah if they don't have it. But generally speaking, like, are they responsible? Do they listen to the rules of the house? Are they respectful? Do they get their schoolwork done? And do they have a pretty resilient sense of who they are? Like, do they already have a life outside of the home where they've got whatever they are, their activities, their sports, their friends, where they might be able to resist the peer pressure online or what they're being told? Like, being able to look at it with a bit of skepticism, because
Mm.
as they get older, they're always going to have that drive. Since they're little, they want to do and do and do all the things, but they don't have as much break to sit back and say like, whoa, is this a good idea? So you kind of want to see that part develop in them,
Mm.
I think, before you thrust them into having their own device. Like I totally hear what you're saying about it's not going anywhere, and teaching them to use it responsibly is so important. But I feel like I'm less concerned about them maybe seeing some stuff at school or on their friend's phone here and there versus like having their own device that they're on all the time.
So it's
So
access. It's the amount of access. So a phone, they have more access, where a computer, they have to log on and then go and find the things. So it's like probably the notifications you're saying, and just sort of the constant ability to access people and other people's lives constantly that's coming at them.
because I also think that's when parents start to struggle, right? And that's when parents are like, oh my gosh, what did I do? Like, I'm having such a hard time reeling it back because they're just wanting to go, go, go on it, and you're trying to control it. So I feel like when you could get to a place with them where there is that happy medium and they've got some ability to discern what they're doing and, how much is maybe too much for them, that's a better time where both of you won't struggle as much. Like kids are
Yeah.
kids, they're going to get into trouble no matter what. I don't think that's a bad thing. Like I got into lots of trouble when I was a teenager, but being able to limit, I do think there's the content issues. Like there's some insane content that they can come,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like the sheer amount of time that kids are spending right now is just, I kind of think of it, sorry, I'm blabbering on now,
No,
but
it's really helpful. Actually, I think that's really helpful that you're saying. I think there's so much conversation in around everything, and the time piece makes so much sense as a mom, because you wouldn't want them to be doing gaming. Like you wouldn't want them on their computer games for 10 hours either, right? So I think you're
wait,
making a really good, easy, tangible point that if they're on their phone more than they're in the real world, we have a massive problem. And that's what a lot of them are doing, is they're living on their phones more than the real world in reality. And that's easy to hold.
to hold. I think an easy way for parents to think about it, I explain it like if you think about your kids' life as a garden, and so all these pillars of development, healthy development that we know are important, are the flowers in a garden. So you've got your sleep, you've got your, time with friends, time with family, time outdoors, your confidence. So that's your garden. And if you think about social media as a weed in the garden, and so if you as the parent are putting boundaries around their use, you're keeping that use low, the weeds can exist in a garden and the garden can still thrive and be beautiful. And even sometimes
Mm-hmm.
the weeds can be, some weeds are pretty, right? Like there's some positive things out there, but if they're just given unlimited access, those weeds will take over so quickly and
Right.
then replace all the good, and that's when we see the kids get into trouble with their mental.
When when are you finding, because you're saying that there are so many kids that are coming to see you in your practice. When when did those, what happened in that home or with the child or with the parent that they realized we need help?
So it depends, because sometimes it's the kid that brings themselves in, like they've recognized that they want help. Sometimes it's the parent. I think when it's getting to the point where they aren't, like I see a lot of school refusal. So maybe kids
Oh.
that aren't getting to school, having a lot of trouble getting there.
Is there a
Kids,
lot of, are there like more kids than we know that are having that?
yes, it's a really, really big problem. I mean, again, I have a small sample size, but like in my practice of just over 1,200 people, like I see that often enough. And sometimes kids are out of school for semester, a full year. COVID definitely made that worse, definitely.
Hmm.
But
It
yeah,
was
that
it was gasoline, right? Like all of these little things are gasoline to the
yeah,
to the fire.
yeah, that would be a big one. And then other than that, it would be suicidal thoughts that they've maybe told a parent about, um, or just feeling depressed, and they've kind of, something's happened that's triggered that. Because I often say, why you come in now? And I think they just decide they've had enough and they want help. Maybe they tried some counseling already and it's not working kind of thing.
Do you find that these teens, is there something that they have in common? Obviously, they have a parent who's brought them there. Somehow
Nat
they've
wants
got
a
there.
reason why.
No, I want to know are the kids like, because we're the parents, we're adults, we're not their age, we're not living in their world. Is there something that they say as or there's like a common theme that they say about what they feel like their parents aren't doing right, or do they wish that their parents would limit it more and they don't, or say something or do something? Is there anything that we wouldn't know?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good question. I would say that honestly, the biggest protective factor against why a child may not follow through with hurting themselves is their relationship with their parent. Like, usually, if you say you're thinking about these things, what's stopping you from doing it? Most often, it's mom or dad. And so, if you have a strong relationship with your child, number one, like that is the biggest protective factor, I think. Number two, I would say that when kids are struggling with the dynamic at home, it is usually related to, and it may not actually be a real, like it may be an imagined thing. Sometimes it's real, but they feel like they're not being listened to or heard. And sometimes, I also know the parents, and I'm thinking like, I think, or they're scared to go to their parents, I will say. So, and sometimes they say like, I think your parents would actually be, but they're just scared. So
Mm-hmm.
I think really having that open relationship, and accepting them for who they are at that time, knowing that that may change, and not to say you don't necessarily challenge what they're thinking or feeling, but doing that in a supportive way. Like, I think in a lot of ways parents can probably be more curious and ask more questions as a avenue to offering advice. Like, ask more questions to try to figure out what your kid might be thinking or feeling, and then even asking like, do you want advice about that, or do you just want to be listened to? Yeah.
Yeah,
In
that makes sense.
terms of, I'm like, I could talk to you forever because I just feel like this is such a new topic for so many of us, right? This is really, like kind of, hard because we're like living proof. I feel like it's the smoking of our generation when everyone was like, smoking, it's fine, it's like
Yeah.
fun. And now it's like cell phones. Oh my God. Um, if you could tell parents, here's what a recommendation is zero time on social media, because I hear cell phones and I hear social media, and social media seems to be the problem, in your opinion, not just cell phones. So it's actually social media. Um, on social media, would you have give them any time, or do you think overall it's kind of 99% harmful?
So, okay, so are you talking about a kid that's already using it, like they're
I think that the average parent who is kid is probably on it too much, but they're
yeah.
going to school, they're joining clubs, they're overall happy. On the weekends, they probably are on it way too much. But like, what would you say are the things that we should be looking like the average parent, not the ones who are like, you need help, SOS.
Yeah. And again, like I hate to put a timestamp on it just because it's going to vary from child to child, but I think there are some studies that will show that about 2 hours or less, social media can be a good supplement to real world connections, keeping in touch with your friends, just as we do. Like, I text my friends a
Mm.
lot throughout the
Like
day, right?
group chats, yeah.
Yeah. Once you get into that over 2 to 3 hour range is when you start to see those rates of loneliness, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts. All that seems to spike up like fairly quickly. And I think if we just think about it, sort of common sense, like if I scrolled social media for 3 hours a day just consuming, like, I don't have depression, but I feel very confident that I would be depressed if I consumed that much content, like it's just
Right.
because it's taking you, like, you wake up after and you're like, what did I just do with half of my day? So I think what I see with kids a lot too is they come in and they're kind of lost for meaning. Like, they don't feel
Mm-hmm.
like their life has any meaning or purpose. They struggle a lot with motivation. And I think that that does have to do with the time spent on these apps where it's hard, everything's instant gratification. Like, how do you feel motivated to do anything else when this is just here waiting for you? So,
Yeah.
to answer your question, yeah, I feel like as a sort of number, 2 or less hours is safer. But again, you have to ask yourself those questions because um, a kid could be harmed at less or more, just depending on the temperament or.
I think it's helpful just to have guidance because we have teenagers and 100% their communications on Snapchat. Like 100%, it's where they're all connecting, and it's not so much a social media app as it is a communication app.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not going to scroll
Mm-hmm.
on social media on Snapchat, and I think our thing is like know your why, like understand your child, like understand why your children are using what, and then work from there. Because if you're just going to go and pull their communication when that's how they connect, then you're just isolating them, and then they're going to be depressed for another reason because they can't connect with their friends or
Yeah,
whatever. You really have to, if they're on it, we have to work together with them to put in healthy limits and understand how they're feeling. But in terms of I also just want to point out that social media is not the only reason some children might feel anxiety and depression. And if
yes, of
their
course.
child is having that, they should still go talk to their doctor, not just take
Yeah,
away social media and
for sure.
assume it's going to get better or whatever, or, ADHD, like medication is sometimes helpful for some kids. And sometimes we can do healthier things to help them with the situation. Yeah, fair.
For sure, for sure. I think absolutely some kids, even after you pull back on the screens, they're still struggling,
Mm-hmm.
and that intervention is necessary. One thing I want to say, which I think is really important that you say, is I feel like a lot of parents still have no idea what their kids are doing online. So
Yeah.
I think it's good that you know, and I think that's a tip for parents. Like, as you would sit down and watch a movie with your kid, like sit down and look at their For You page, like look at what they're doing, and then again ask questions, because I think you can be really reassured sometimes or not,
Mm-hmm.
um, depending on what the content is, because that's the stuff that they're consuming. So kind of show me what you're looking at, like let's look at it together. I think that's a really great idea to give you an idea.
Yeah. And I think also explaining to them, like I would say some of them really don't understand that they're being served it because that's what they're watching. They just think it's random. And then, like you said, it's really easy to change that algorithm
Yeah.
and start searching for things like if somehow you've fallen into this hole, what do you like? If you're going to be on it and you're going to spend some time on it, what do you like? Search up those things because that's what you want to consume. And I was just thinking when we were saying, like, if you're scrolling for 3 hours a day and then you come off and you don't feel good about yourself and you have no purpose, we were saying that they're still like building their confidence and their identity. And it's really hard to find your own identity when you're just watching everybody else's identity all the time. You get off and you're like, well, it seems like they know themselves and they're doing this. Who am I? I haven't even spent any time thinking about who I am. And that's such a vulnerable time for them to be figuring out who they are, but they're too busy looking at
Who
who
they want
everybody
to,
else
who they
is.
want to be next.
Yeah.
And that's another reason to um, limit their time in a sense, because kids need to feel boredom. Like, how do you explore and think about who you are in this world and who you want to be if you're being
Mm-hmm.
told who to be and
Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff? Sorry, I didn't answer your question, Nat, about do kids want parents to place boundaries on them? I feel like no, they don't.
Yes, they do.
But yes, they do. Like, I don't think they'll ever say that, but I truly think
Mm-hmm.
that they do. I truly think they do.
And they want you to be an excuse. Like my daughter will be like, block everything right now because I don't want to get into this. Like put the FaceTime block on. She's 15 and she's like, no, it's and I say okay, no problem. So I think sometimes they are like, my phone was on D and D. I didn't know, right? So sometimes they do want it, and the younger kids might not know how to ask for that. So
Yeah.
I think
It's
that
a lot of pressure to feel
Mm-hmm.
like you have to be on your phone 24/7. And to that point, I feel like parents run into troubles with, like, well, how do I physically get them off? Like, they don't listen to me if I say put the phone down. Like, I truly think you've got to physically remove the phone. And that might be just something that you decided in your family, that, between the hours of whatever and whatever, we're all going to put our phone in this box. Like, You can buy lock boxes even. And I truly feel like the anxiety that goes down when you don't have access to your
Mm-hmm.
phone and you don't have to think about, should I pick it up? Can I pick it up? Because I can't pick it up is like liberating for
Mm-hmm.
adults and kids. So taking the phone is a really good measure and they'll understand after a while.
They'll
Yeah.
appreciate it. You're remarkable. You're amazing. I really appreciate as a parent what you're doing. And, education's sometimes scary, but I think that it's also something we all need to hear. Where can everyone find you? And, I know you talk a lot about Ontario because we have the new law and where they can't bring their phones in.
Where are you though?
On
Kitchener.
Oh, okay.
but you're online too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's how I found you.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, my Instagram is the smartphone effect MD. And if you are in Ontario and you're a teacher or something and you want to reach out, like I've been doing a lot of like webinars with parents just to try to talk about, supporting the cell phone policies, but also talking about all of this. Like I have a presentation that kind of runs through everything. And I think it's been well received. So
And
that's,
Allison, we literally are making like a course where we teach them how to put in the controls and the boundaries and the
I know.
settings
Can I
and block
help?
the apps.
And
Like
limit the time.
we actually do step by step of a PDF, so you know how to go into Find My and you know how to or the family settings, and then how you can block the times and how you can shut everything down, how you can block contacts. Like you can do so much on your settings that if the struggle is there, you can set up a lot of boundaries and block so many things.
And we find that it is really overwhelming and for parents. So we're creating something to make it, because for us we need just simple step by step. Go here, do this, block this, that, and then
and
you
even
feel so much
within
more in
each
control.
app, you can definitely go and set a whole bunch of boundaries and wellness time. So I think that the conversation of it can be like an empowering relationship where you work together with your team to find out how and why you're doing what you're doing, not just a power trip to grab their phone and turn everything off. Because if you've given it to them, there's nothing worse than fighting with them the entire day over what
Ugh.
they're doing. So it's so much better to have a relationship and build something together so you can understand and they can understand why you're doing this for them, because most kids respond really great to the why. Like they'll be receptive of your why, not just because I said so.
And I
100%.
have one more question for the people who aren't in Ontario, but I don't know what all your situations are. We have a new law where phones aren't allowed in the classroom. I'm curious, Allison, have you heard how it's going?
Yeah, I feel like it's going really well. And I'm like, I think we all know it's sort of the honeymoon period right now.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
my husband is a high school teacher and he's like, yeah, it's not been a problem. So I think they're listening right now, which is really great. And I think everyone's reaping the benefits. We'll just have to see
Right.
as time goes on. And yeah, hopefully we don't get a little more loosey goosey, but I feel like it's so good for everyone.
Oh my gosh, yes.
All of our kids are being
So
really
thankful.
responsive to it, and they're really strict in the school. So I'm thankful for that.
Yes.
That's good. I'm glad.
Well, thank you for everything.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. And if there's anything we can do to help you connect you with schools or whatever, we'll definitely keep you in the forefront and we'll link everything down below. And not that you need any help because you're freaking probably so busy you can't even keep your head on straight. And then you have a practice of 1,200 people. So yes, you're very busy, but anything we can do, we're so appreciative of your time and of you being here.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye.